Okay, people, it's back. That's right, anime and manga fans. In case you don't know, it is finally returning. But one of the bigger questions to ask for many regarding its return is the fact that, well, at least for some people, do we care? Now, I know that may come across as cynical to some people, or some people might be like, yo, dog, what do you mean? How are you gonna say that? How are you gonna ask that question? Well, as somebody that has supported this series, I think there's definitely some validity to that question, especially for many that have been kind of sticking around at the very least waiting for this thing to happen. And well, we're gonna talk about it because there's also some other stuff that is going down that actually correlates to its return and actually what it costs, because there's another series that is going on hiatus, a major one. So without further ado, people, let's jump into another exciting episode of Forever News, the only news source that provides anything and everything anime and manga related, and we don't bore you, we get into it. Let's do it. And before we continue, hit that subscribe button and that bell so you can get notified on anything and everything in the world of anime and manga. I got you covered if you hit them buttons. Now, many have been waiting for the return of Hunter x Hunter. People have been like, yo, what's going on? Now, I do believe that this is one of the rarest times in the whole historical run of Hunter x Hunter that pretty much there have been several updates along the way regarding the series' return. People have been waiting for it to return for quite some time, but they've been at the very least, you know, I don't want to say pacified, but essentially kind of given updates on like, yo, this is what's going on, the series is at this stage of returning, so on and so forth. And the creator of Hunter x Hunter, Yoshihiro Togashi, has been very good at the very least saying like, yo, this is where I'm at with things. So by no means do I want to kind of come at the author or say anything wrong about the author or just in general attack the author, because if anything, this has been the greatest attempt at, you know, kind of keeping the fans updated, keeping the fans in tune and aligned with like, hey, the series will be returning and don't worry, you're not gonna be like left in the dark, so to speak. But I did want to add in a flip side, so to speak, to this whole perspective of Hunter x Hunter's return, because while there is several people that are of course very excited, looking forward to its return, all of that stuff, there is another side of this, and that's the simple fact of that Hunter x Hunter has kind of had such an irregular release, had such a kind of schedule that hasn't been of course the norm. But even more so, aside from that, we know of course that with its return, eventually at some given point, based on what we know, which we'll get to it in a second, there's a limited run for this thing. There's only so much content that is in the vault, so to speak, for this return, and then once that's done, it's kind of a question of, okay, what happens next? Because based on the announcement, it says the manga Hunter x Hunter is finally back starting next week, and it will return with a color page. So it's legit, you know, right around the corner, so to speak, figuratively anyway. And supposedly here's the schedule for the next 10 chapters. Essentially, you got June 28th, July 5th, July 12th, July 19th, July 26th, August 2nd, August 9th, August 16th, August 23rd, August 30th, and September 6th. Because if you've been following this thing that we do here, then you know that the creator of Hunter x Hunter has been hard at work at making sure there is a lineup of chapters to where basically like each week you will get something from this manga. So it won't just be like, you know, oh, Togashi's taking a break this week or whatnot, at the very least for the schedule that he has set forth based on the work that he's been putting in behind the scenes. And again, I want to also throw in there that pretty excited for it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, you know what I'm saying. I think it's always good, whether it's not even just for myself, but in general, it's great for the community, it's great for everybody that Hunter x Hunter is back, because it's a great series. It's one of those things where there's always been a discussion of if Hunter x Hunter never went away, would it rival One Piece's popularity, success, and well, quality wise, Hunter x Hunter is always quality. Like there's no debate there as far as Hunter x Hunter having quality. But as far as that goes, it's like, yo, dog, if Hunter x Hunter was just straight up side to side with One Piece, what those numbers would have been like. But again, that's a discussion that is like a what if, because of course Hunter x Hunter has again the schedule based on everything that has happened with Yoshihiro Togashi, the creator of Hunter x Hunter. So with all that being said, then you got to ask yourself this: are you invested enough to get back into this world, this realm of Hunter x Hunter? Despite the fact that yes, Togashi gives updates, you still never really truly know exactly when the return will be. And I guess I'm more so giving this perspective for the people that actually do feel like this, while there is many that, like I said, are extremely excited about this thing, can't wait for its return. There are some people that are at the very least skeptical on like, well, Hunter x Hunter is indeed an investment, you know what I'm saying? It's an investment of your time, it's an an investment of, you know, getting back into the whole swing of things, remembering this, that, and the third. So I guess that just kind of raises a question of like, yeah, it's back, but is it worth it? Do you care? And in general, is it worth the investment of yourself into this thing? Regardless of what, Yoshihiro Togashi, the GOAT, and I know there's going to be some people that are going to misconstrue, or at the very least, well, hopefully not, think like, oh, yo, Fornev, why are you, you know, talking like this about its return? I'm just speaking what many are actually thinking. Not to mention the fact of what it costs, because it is a known fact at this particular point that every time it returns, something else has to kind of move aside for it to return. And what I mean by that is the last time Hunter x Hunter returned, Jujutsu Kaisen finished. Like the manga ended at that particular point. So it was like, okay, Jujutsu Kaisen goes away, and then boom, Hunter x Hunter is back. Which leads us into our next story perfectly, actually. Despite the fact that you're getting its return, another series is going on a hiatus for a bit of a, I want to say, lengthy time. And what I mean by that is this. Kagurabachi is officially going on hiatus. Now, for somebody that kind of recently was more so getting into the story as far as just kind of getting a little bit, I guess you would say more so dedicated to kind of just like, all right, this is the next gen of Shonen Jump. This is going to be the future, so to speak, of the stories that are going to be, you know, kind of dominating the magazine. So, you know, if you watched the video that was recently done, then you would know I was like, yo, this might be the next one, you know what I'm saying? However, with the arrival of Hunter x Hunter's return, Kagurabachi is going on hiatus, which again is like, bruh, so Hunter returns the first time and Jujutsu Kaisen comes to an end. This time around, you know, Shonen Jump's bread and butter, so to speak, is essentially going on hiatus. Thankfully, it's not a crazy long hiatus, but, well, here's the information we have so far. To our readers, thank you very much for always reading Kagurabachi. Starting from Weekly Shonen Jump issue 31 on sale Monday, June 29th, Kagurabachi will go on hiatus. While Mr. Hokazono had intended to continue writing after repeated discussions, we have decided that he will take a certain period of rest in order to deliver the work in a stable form going forward. We plan to resume serialization around August. We look forward to your continued support for Kagurabachi. And again, that's from the editorial department. And I'm gonna just be honest with this right here. For starters, it's a major good thing for the author, because I think in recent times the author was starting to, I don't want to say succumb to the pressures of Weekly Shonen Jump, but it was definitely affecting the work, where there was, you know, times where the author was like suddenly having to take off. Like there was a lot of things going on with this author in recent times, so you could kind of see, I don't want to say the writing on the wall, so to speak, but basically it was like, all right, this author in particular needed to kind of step away from this story and kind of, you know, recuperate, on top of the fact that, well, the anime is on its way. They recently, you know, put out a teaser or whatnot, so there's a lot of big things getting ready to transpire for Kagurabachi. It's not like this is just, you know, a run-of-the-mill manga. Again, this is something that you can tell Shonen Jump really believes is going to be something successful, and it's basically, you know, one of the leaders of the next generation, so to speak. So it's definitely a major good thing for the author. I want to stress that. I think majority of people that, you know, support this story can agree that this author taking off, while it's a bit of a bummer, you know, nobody wants to be essentially missing out on their favorite work, you know, especially like this author really puts in a lot of effort to make sure that Kagurabachi is a top of the line type of story. But at the same time, again, the author needs rest. I will say on one aspect of this thing, because while Kagurabachi is, you know, rising through the ranks, so to speak, it's getting up there, you know, it's becoming little by little a household name type of story, this author hasn't necessarily completely made it just yet, right? Like the anime hasn't come out yet, the sales are great, but it's not like, you know, what transpires usually after a mega hit anime comes out, where the volume starts selling into the millions of millions. I think right now it's maybe at, I want to say maybe 4 mil, somewhere around there. I could be off on that, but like, you know, it sold a few volumes, but again, it's not at that level where you could completely say like it's a solidified mega success, because again, the anime hasn't come out, and that's usually what propels a story to that aspect. And I say all that to say that something that doesn't get talked enough about regarding these situations is, because mind you, getting a little bit of insight behind the scenes of like, you know, the payment that these authors get and whatnot, these authors still depend on, for example, like the volume sales and their salary, so to speak, or, you know, their revenue that they generate from the actual magazine themselves or whatnot. And because this author is now going to miss out on some time, the author is probably going to miss out on some revenue. And I bring that up because, again, you know, this is something that is a very delicate situation where an author is like, hasn't quite made it just yet, but is on the cusp of it and missing out on revenue. I'm sure this author is probably not the most happiest about it, especially, again, taking a look at that press release. It was basically like the people, you know, the higher up, so to speak, had to say like, yo, we get it. You want to continue. We get it that there's some stuff that you're like eager to make happen or whatnot, but you kind of gotta, you know, sit down for a minute, on top of the fact that they probably figured the timing is perfect of, all right, we put, you know, the bread and butter, so to speak, and we're not including One Piece because we know what One Piece is, creme de la creme of the magazine. But as far as that being a flagship leader for the next generation, they put it to the side while Hunter x Hunter returns. So again, there's always, I guess, a cost to certain things, right? Like you get your Hunter x Hunter back, then Kagurabachi has to go for a little bit. But again, considering Hunter x Hunter's probably gonna go for quite a few months at the very least, it's only what, from the end of June up until somewhere in August it'll return, so it's not too big of a deal. Nevertheless, again, that's a conversation that most people don't even really necessarily consider, of like, yo, that author taking that time off does affect the revenue that they generate, which also could potentially affect the series. And what I mean by that is, remember that these authors, they have to also provide for the people under them. So like, you know, the background designers, the people that do the effects, all of that stuff, they got to get paid as well. So just something to note that most people, I want to say, arguably neglect of a fact of like, yo, let the author get as much rest as they need. But again, you know, it costs money to make stuff happen. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, Kagurabachi going on hiatus. It's kind of crazy. Again, the Hunter x Hunter effect. I don't know, like what's been going on lately. I wish they would have stuck to what they had initially said about Hunter x Hunter returning, now that I think of it. Of basically, like, at one point they said it wasn't going to return in Weekly Shonen Jump. They were going to do something else. Then they must have changed their mind because, again, it still works. You know, older fans come back in once they recognize, wait, Hunter x Hunter's back. And then all of a sudden, you know, some of the previous fans are like, yo, we checking that out. So maybe that's also somewhat of a tactic that they utilize of like, all right, you know, because people that are reading Kagurabachi and this new generation, a lot of those people are like newer fans to manga, newer fans to Weekly Shonen Jump. When you bring in Hunter x Hunter, you're gonna bring back some of the older fandom. It's kind of like when they include Naruto related stuff in Boruto, it brings back some of the previous fandom. So similar concept or whatnot, and I gotta assume that that's partially also why they continue to utilize Hunter x Hunter within the realm of Weekly Shonen Jump, opposed to, there's plenty of places they could put it. Hunter x Hunter, you could throw the argument, would be suitable even in a weekly seinen magazine. Seinen is for young adults, you know, like a kind of a little bit older of a demographic, so to speak, and Hunter x Hunter kind of fits in that realm as well. So yeah, very interesting. Kagurabachi going on hiatus. And also I want to add in as well that it's a possibility that, again, while the author's health of course might be somewhat of an issue in there, it might not be entirely that this is just all straight up that, you know, there's something wrong health wise with the author completely. Again, there might be some issues there, but ultimately this seems pretty well planned. This seems like it wasn't just like, from the higher ups perspective at the very least, like a last minute decision, because Tagashi been gearing up to bring back Hunter x Hunter anyway, so it was probably somewhat in the works, you know, for some time of like, yo, we got another big juggernaut coming in, we could let Kagurabachi's off the rest. But yeah, the big K, Kagurabachi taking a break. I'm not too mad at it. Again, just hopefully when this author gets back into the swing of things or whatnot, things will go the way they're supposed to, and when the anime comes, it's just gonna be like, woo. Okay, now this one is very big because, again, if you've been following the Boruto story, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, with the latest chapter release as of the recording of this video, I want to say it's chapter 35, something, again, extremely major that is going to be a humongous game changer for this manga. I'll be honest with you, like, I haven't been this much interested in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex in quite some time. This chapter right here, after checking it out, I'm like, oh wow, yo, everything is about to be so different because again, we recently had like a major villain that was defeated, and that was major because again, it like dwindles down to how much of the story is gonna be left, right? You got to imagine like if another big threat is done, then you know the story reaches further into its conclusion. However, this chapter right here, I'm not sure like which way they could maneuver with this thing as far as well, because a major key player of this whole thing has kind of just been, well, let's get into it so you guys can understand. If you're not following Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, there's about 34 chapters before this one. You can read through it, you can understand, because this is major. And again, if you're a Naruto fan, you also understand that some of these characters being connected to Naruto, and this is important because the chapter begins with again Jura reflecting on the passing of Mamushi that was defeated in some of the recent chapters, one of the big threats of the divine tree. And Jura was like, while it kind of got him excited, and that's an interesting thing to know, Jura was actually excited by Mamushi's ambitions, right, to kind of free the divine trees from their position in society and rise up and become something great. It excited him, but then at the same time Jura still has that primal instinct of like, but that was animalistic, or maybe that's the wrong terminology actually, because if it's more so primal, then he probably would have been fine with that. But it seems like because of the knowledge he's obtained throughout all this time, because remember, Jura's actually seeking to find knowledge, seeking the truth, so to speak, throughout this whole situation. He doesn't really seem like he's greatly mourning him in a way, like it affected him, which also kind of showcases that Jura is becoming more, would you say, human? Because that kind of sounds more in that aspect as things develop, despite the fact that again these are divine tree peoples, but you could see that they're actually developing feelings. He's actually developing, maybe you could argue like the consciousness is becoming a major factor in this whole situation, which is pretty interesting because again, if the villains start to were, I don't want to say misguided, but maybe you could throw somewhere in that ballpark, but if they actually start to understand like, yo, but that's not how you do. You think back to like Dragon Ball Z, Majin Buu. Majin Buu was a crazy monster, but once he actually got somewhat of somebody with a conscience to be able to say like, yo dog, what you're doing is kind of messed up and wrong, then that's when Majin Buu started to act differently and started to be more kind and nice to people and not just being completely malicious. And it seems that Jura, at the very least after this chapter, was kind of like, damn, while he's not completely mourning Mamushi, he is feeling something there, despite even talking crap after the fact. And then it gets into something that was a little bit, some of the fandom might say questionable. I'm gonna just shut down all of that right there of what they were saying about the relationship between Jura and Hidari. I'm gonna say that, bro, they're like the last Mohicans, so to speak, of this whole scenario, right? It's down to Jura and Hidari, so they're gonna have some type of family love, they're gonna have some type of brotherly love, camaraderie, and let's just put it at that, because I seen, especially after Ada's reaction, because you know Ada can see everything, her reaction to it was like, they're not really, like, you know, she was shocked, whatever, but I think it's more so like, yo, they're all they have at this point. Everybody else has kind of been removed from this situation at this current time, because Hidari wonders why Jura brought him back, right? Like, you know, out of all of the other divine tree people, nobody else got brought back except right now it's Jura and Hidari together. So again, why? And Jura's response again is one of the things that kind of had the fandom a little bit with whatever, because he was like, I can't imagine a world without you in it. Essentially, it's kind of like, you could throw the argument that Hidari right now kind of resembles a certain light, so to speak, in Jura's world. You know what I mean? And without that, Jura probably would be extremely lonely. But the way he phrased it, I think that's also just a demonstration of, once again, more of Jura's consciousness growing and more of Jura becoming a person, a human, a person with feelings and stuff like that, and showcasing that. I think it's demonstrating like, bro, it's not just anymore how it used to be of this, I don't want to say a husk, but like a person that just didn't really care, to now it's like, yo dog, as the divine tree people are leaving, he's starting to understand what's important to him, who's important to him and whatnot. And so you're getting a reflection in that aspect. And despite Hidari saying like it was kind of an icky thing to hear or whatnot, he said he was okay with that. He said he was fine with Jura saying that, like, you know, he can't imagine life without Hidari in it. So again, there's just a lot of love, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of love between the two of them, and I think that that's just, I ain't gonna lie, because you know, you have all this time to experience with this story as the months go by. You rarely see characters that start off with, they were empty shells, so to speak, and as things have developed over time, like it went from empty shells to these two, you know, beastly strong creatures turning into something else. And I really appreciate it, because it's rare that you see, like, it's almost like you've gotten the character development from these villain side of things, but there was so much of a far way for them to go from the very beginning of it, opposed to it just being like a kid that was mistreated at one point or something like that. These were two people that just trying to even understand what the hell was the reason for them being here, and now they're slowly starting to come to some sort of resolution within themselves. And again, that's fire. And the reaction again of Jura smiling like, yo dog, there's some things that are reflecting off of each other in this chapter for sure. Jura smiles, and then Boruto smiles later in the chapter. We'll get into that. Then there's something with Inojin putting up to a certain task of being attached to something, and then Kawaki gets attached to something and has to be put up to a certain task. So very much so some things that are mirroring each other. And the reason I bring this up is because back in the days, that's how Kishimoto would do things. Like Naruto went through something, Sasuke went through something. It would always be like, you know, kind of the flip side of the same coin type of deal. And I think this chapter represented that. So Kishimoto, again, from what we've heard, he doesn't really have his hands too deep into this whole scenario, but it's enough that Ikamoto is showcasing like, yo, this is kind of like that Kishimoto type of writing, and how could you ever be mad at that? We get an update on Sarada. Great news. Her vision is for now fixed, whatever that means, because it looked like she got some glasses, which I'm gonna just start singing the Berserk song for a second. Put your glasses on, nothing will be wrong. I love how it promotes actually people putting on their glasses. Like, you know, that's a very big deal, and it helps people with their vision and whatnot. And even though in the realm of this story, it's kind of like, wait, this girl that has like super insanely strong vision has it a little bit messed up, and then a pair of regular glasses are able to fix her back to somewhat of a normal state. Okay, but again, you also got to throw the argument that Sakura said in the past, I want to say it was the last chapter, that it wasn't more so that her vision was completely damaged, it was more so that her vision changed. Like the prescription of the glasses was not the one that worked for her, but seemingly she got a better prescription because now her vision is a little bit different. So there's also something to note at that aspect as well. Again, the importance of your glasses. And then the spoiler that had everybody earlier of like, what was that kunai? Could it be Minato has returned? No. Boruto essentially tries to get Sarada's attention so that she could follow him, leading into their discussions, going into more of the mirroring situation. Koji approaches Inojin basically with this task of, yo, I'm putting a toad on you 24/7. Essentially, to clarify that, Koji was going to be watching Inojin 24/7 to also utilize his abilities. But again, Koji we trust, right? And Koji we trust. No, Koji we actually trust to do something like that for the most part. Maybe some of the characters are still leery of like, yo, he seems shady at some point, but he always turns out to have a pure intention at the very end. It's just things get murky or whatnot. But at the very least, again, you can trust Koji. The flip side with the Amado thing, we'll get to that in a sec. Because then Amado reveals to Kawaki, once they have their meeting that was set up in the last chapter, that basically he's had Kawaki at 85% offense and 15% defense, and the only reason he's been surviving some of these attacks that he's been taking is because of that 15% defense, despite the fact Kawaki's like, but I just want to go ham, I just want to have my full strength, dog, what's going on? So then Amado, which I don't want to talk bad about the character, but it's still one of those things of like, even what he does in this chapter is like, come on bro, what can you say about dude? Because he basically gives a similar proposition of Koji where he tells him, yo dog, I'm gonna put this toad on you and I'm gonna crank it up. Yo, you're 100%. So Kawaki right now is running on 100% offense. Essentially, you do not want to mess with Kawaki because you're going to get obliterated. Like, you know, just a warning there, so to speak. Don't mess with Kawaki because you're going to get obliterated. Dude is at 100% right now. However, Amado throws in this little scenario that basically he's going to be in the background overseeing him 24/7 with this toad. So that way, if anything comes at him, he's not at 0%. He could just immediately flick a switch and switch it from 100% offense to 100% defense. So he's going to be playing background controller. And I don't know how I feel about that. I'm going to be honest with you. I know Kawaki, despite agreeing because he wants that extra 15% of power so that he could just demolish anything, Kawaki's never wanted anybody to control him. Coming from his background and everything that was done to him, he doesn't want nobody controlling him, but he obliges basically for the simple fact of now his strength is going to be even higher, even more increased. And Amado, yo, it reminds me again, going back to some Kishimoto writing of, you know, there's a puppeteer behind the puppeteer behind the puppeteer, which means that there's probably somebody pulling Amado strings, but we'll talk about that at another time. And of course, course, you know, there's always something. There's a catch to things. Amado says, oh, but I got one favor. I'm gonna do all of this for you. Don't worry, dog. I got one favor. And before we find out what that favor is, essentially we cut back to Boruto and Sarada. Boruto actually being able to smile. Again, reminiscent of Jura smiling and Boruto smiling. What's going on here? But Boruto is there with Sarada actually having a good, happy moment for once. She apologizes to him for what happened, the whole eye thing. Like, they actually had a calming moment. Although this even shows a little bit, and I'm gonna be honest with you, when I saw it, I was like, wow, it's a great moment for Boruto. It also just shows, maybe, I don't want to say it's a sad thing, maybe in my eyes it might be a little bit of like, despite him having this thing, even Boruto kind of has to have a motive behind things. Like, he didn't just, yo, let's catch up, Sarada, like, I want to look out for you. Like, even he had something that he was trying to obtain through the scenario. And honestly, I find that kind of, I don't want to say again sad, because it almost comes across as not manipulative, but damn it, can't he just have a regular moment without, or can't any of these characters just have a happy moment without some type of, you know, soury thing behind the scenes? You get what I'm saying? Because then Boruto tells Sarada, hey, Code is still on his stuff and he wants to utilize Sarada in order to basically get Code, basically use her as like bait, so then Code can go after her, and once Code goes after her, then boom, which I think possibly Boruto's trying to flip Code. After that conversation where Koji said that that is a possibility, Boruto might be trying to do that, and I don't see that happening, and I don't think that's going to happen, and part of me doesn't want that to happen. I'm gonna keep it real, but yeah, it just seems a little bit strange. But again, I'm just gonna say that I am happy that for the most part Boruto got to be happy. Like, that actually legitimately, like, bro, if you look at, sometimes Two Blue Vortex felt like a nightmare. Like, you know, the time where Boruto was captured and forced to sit there and not get up and stuff like that. Some of these scenarios were really, really torturous moments for the character. To see him actually be happy for once, that's great. Then we cut back to again, which we know that Ikemoto is actually like a really big cat person or whatnot, so that's probably why they had to incorporate some type of cat stuff, because Hidori's reading a book. Jora's like, what book you reading? He's like, I'm not really reading, I'm just looking at pictures, so to speak, and he's just looking at cats. Basically, you know, he's looking at cats and he's like, yo, ain't these things cute? And Jora's like, cute, huh? Which is interesting because they're both tapping into their more genuine side of, like, you know, letting the mask slip for a bit, or not even slip, just like removing the mask of, like, instead of just, oh, we're hardened animals, we're Jura earlier in the chapter kind of expressing how he would feel about Hidori not being around, and then Hidori kind of expressing some of his hobbies outside of just all the stuff that they're doing, like, yo, he just likes cats. It was an interesting moment, a good moment of, again, more character development for the villains, for people that have complained of, like, we don't know about the villains, we want to know more about them. Hidori likes cats. And then the part of the chapter of genuinely one of the main reasons why I was so interested in talking about this, and when I saw, because I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I catch a spoiler or two. When I heard about this, I was like, oh my gosh, because this changes everything for Boruto to Blue Vortex. So legitimately, how Boruto's gonna move moving forward, how things is gonna transpire, because essentially, Inojin is approached by Amado. Amado's like, yo, take this information to Koji. He comes across as shady when he's saying it. He's like, yo, dog, just trust, like, I need you to do it, like, we need to do this ASAP. Inojin brings the data, and despite Koji trying to be a little bit cautious about it, Kawaki was shrunken in there using one of his abilities and was able to essentially shut down Koji. Cul-de-sac. I don't know what cul-de-sac, culinary. And yeah, Koji being removed from play for the time being because Amado's toad, or I think Amado talking through the toad, said he did want to move him back to the lab. So Amado's probably not going to completely have Koji shut down. He probably wants to tinker and figure out what's actually happening. He's trying to probably get the other side of this data so he can really get a grasp of everything that Koji knows and how he has these updates. And it kind of sucks that the reason they were able to catch Koji is that he didn't get the update quick enough. There wasn't an update, so even when that information came from Amado, which that means that Amado probably had a better understanding of these updates than Koji. Remember, he's kind of the mad scientist behind all these things. He knew probably that Koji wouldn't be able to get the update, or maybe he was in control of the updates the entire time. Maybe all these updates, maybe this is all Amado's sick game. And yeah, one of the reasons why I say this is so important is because Koji has been the most biggest factor to Boruto being able to do what he's done up until this point. Boruto is extremely strong. Yes, he has these incredible techniques, very much so at a level that is incomprehensible by most from previous generations. That's true. However, Koji giving the insight on the multiple routes of which way things could go, and all of what Koji has done has been the reason why a lot of these things have been able to go this way. Without Koji in play, Boruto Thankfully, he's grown. Thankfully, he's a lot stronger than he used to be, a lot wiser, all of that stuff. But it's going to be a little bit possibly of a tougher battle moving forward, not having, for certain instances, that insight. Like, the story is going to change so drastically. Koji has been somewhat of the center focal point of all of this, being able to see what's about to happen. Not having that, well, I'll just say that it's about to be extremely crazy, and Boruto 2 Blue Vortex yet again has shocked me in a sense of, yeah, this was an insane chapter. I think Amado, again, isn't going to leave Koji completely shut down. He might try to reprogram him. I don't know how that's going to work, but only time will tell, regardless of what. Yeah, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex has changed dramatically. We got the removal to a certain degree of one of the most important characters of this story, and let me know what you guys think about this whole scenario. What's going to happen moving forward? Is Boruto going to be able to still be as great? I'm talking about the character, as he's been up until this point without Koji's direction, and your overall thoughts and expectations. And that's all I have for this episode of Forever News. It's been a crazy one. I know we went really into this Boruto topic, this Boruto story, but I felt it was important because, again, this manga just changed dramatically. That's all I have for this one. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day. Peace, and yeah, you just watched another episode of Forever News. Peace in. Tell me what that weather do, what it be like. Don't miss a chance, it could be her instead of you. Limited on opportunity, only very few. Sturdy up, need the brave version, not the scary you. Regardless if you put your trust in me, then I'ma carry you. Either way, let me say, fresh cut, best of, new chapter, rest of.